So Idaho, when we look at the Idaho sheep industry as a whole industry, we have 250,000 sheep within the state of Idaho. We rank sixth in the nation actually for total sheep inventory. And among all of those sheep, there's going to be countless breeds, and those breeds are going to account for everything from wool breeds, so you're going to have very fine wool breeds, which will be Rambouillets, Merinos, which their wool will go directly into the textiles industry to be used for clothing, for blankets. There's a really famous mill in Oregon called Pendleton Woolen Mills, and much of the Idaho wool crop will go into the Pendleton Woolen Mill system to make the blankets. They're pretty famous in the West as well as in the U.S. And so we supply a lot of wool for the higher end products, as well as all the way down to coarse wool, which is used for fertilizer, insulation, a little bit of everything. And so we have wool breeds, we have meat breeds, we have a dual purpose breed, which is going to be a wool meat cross. We have dairy sheep in Idaho, which the main focus will be dairy and cheese production. And then we also have what's called hair sheep in Idaho as well. And so we have a very diverse industry here within the state, and the bulk of our inventory is going to be a wool breed, with the wool crop going into production for blankets, for fine wool jackets, for the high-end products native to this area. So there's really not a lot of native sheep breeds to the Americas. The Navajo or the Churro is going to be the only native sheep breed, domestic sheep breed to just the U.S. in general, and that is more native to the Southwest, which is like New Mexico, Arizona area. All the breeds that we have here were brought in with settlers, the needs of the industry. So 3 breeds have been developed in the state of Idaho. The Panama breed, the Targhee, and the Polypay were all developed in Idaho to meet the needs of both of our state geographically as well as the needs of the industry. Yeah, so they were developed, to be able to withstand the terrain that we have in this state. If you get out of Boise, it gets really mountainy and very high mountains, a lot of forest, and so the ability to survive that kind of terrain. But then also, if you ever go south of Boise to Twin Falls, it's sagebrush ground. And so having breeds of sheep and types of sheep that are able to withstand multiple terrains and not just grow but thrive in these areas. And so the idea behind those 3 breeds that were developed was to have the most efficient breed and the most efficient animal that can meet the needs of the industry, in that where consumers are demanding product, as well as being able to thrive in our very unique terrain that we have within the state.
Like the best sheeper that was here in Idaho centuries ago, what kind of type of sheep they have?
Those were all wool breeds. So those were all heavily wool sheep breeds. So again, more of a Rambouillet or a Merino, but those were sheep that were designed primarily for a very fine wool clip. So it's a very high value wool crop that then can get spun and used for high-end textiles industry. And that was when the Basque sheep herders came over. That was primarily what was in the state at the time, and that still actually is true, in that that's the bulk of our inventory comes from wool sheep, the wool breeds.
Okay.
Wool industry, not just globally but also in the U.S., definitely shrunk at that time. And so now in Idaho, while our roots are in the wool industry and we continue to maintain a flock that is heavily wool influenced, primarily the primary income and profit in the sheep industry comes from selling the lambs for meat at this point. It used to be, at the end of the year when you collected all your revenue, right, 50% of your profit would come from your wool crop and 50% would come from selling your lambs. Now, 90% comes from selling your lambs and only 10% will come from selling your wool crop. So similar trend to what was experienced at home as well.
Okay.
Which is truly just sad, honestly, because it's such a great product, and it's renewable, and it's biodegradable, and it's so sustainable, and you can wear it in hot weather, cold weather, anything in between. And so it's quite a shame that that's what happened on a global scale. So that will vary depending on the type of wool that you have. So when we look at wool, you can break it up into different categories or different grades. So you have everything from very fine, which is going to sell for your highest price, to coarse, which is going to be kind of a throwaway. Like you sometimes just can't even give it away. It's not, doesn't really fit our industry sectors. And so wool right now at this moment in the US is taking a bit of a hit. Prices are pretty low right now. I've seen it everywhere from $3 a pound. Right now it's sitting for about $1.15 a pound for fine wool. And so you think when you grade out your wool, the finer it is, the more money it goes for, because it's a higher value product. And so the ultra fine and the super fines is going for about $1.50 a pound right now. And so a wool sheep, so a Rambouillet, will have a fleece of about 8 to 10 pounds in a year is how much she'll grow just naturally. And so at shearing, about 8 pounds roughly. And so when you're only selling for $1 or $2, you're between $8 and $16 for that fleece per pound, or for your total crop. And so it's a numbers game at that point, but still it's considerably less than what it once was. To my understanding, our indigenous population here in Idaho were not natively using sheep in their products. The native sheep breeds to the Americas was in the Southwest and didn't make it up this way. But we still find ways to honor the indigenous tribes and populations within the western United States. So Pendleton Woolen Mills, which is based in Pendleton, Oregon, about 5 hours from here. If you haven't been, it's a really great place. But they make blankets, and all of their blankets are using native indigenous tribal patterns and they have native artists who actually design all the patterns, and they're taking locally grown wool and creating these incredible timeless pieces that people buy from all over the world. Yeah, so during the COVID-19 pandemic, as people were, locked at home, during shutdown, really isolated, and we had all this extra time on our hands, people picked up a lot of hobbies. And what we saw here, especially in this valley, is there was a huge increase in people crocheting and knitting and, making their own sweaters and socks and just trying to do something productive with their hands, really getting back to your roots, as a human race, getting back to the fundamentals of your roots. And so we have here in the Boise Valley multiple yarn and wool shops that have popped up as a result of that, and we're still seeing continued momentum in these stores, and they're continuing to grow and find new ways to engage people into learning these old skills that in a lot of ways have been dying. And so, really putting life back into that industry, and they are really interested in almost a direct-to-consumer setup as well. So, as a sheep producer, you sell your wool to a mill, and then the mill makes it into yarn, and these people really like to know that story. And so it's really added a lot of value back into the wool industry in niche marketing. And I'm hopeful that as more and more people get into this, it'll help surge our supply and demand.